Hello everyone, it's a quick little video to go through what we require if we're building a 1UZ non-VVTi harness specifically into a plug and play with an IS200, IS300 or Altezza. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the different variations that I have here to actually show you. Obviously in the UK we are more likely to have LS400s. Now there are essentially 4 variations. As you can see, I've got 4 ECUs in front of me here. I'll go through exactly each one now with you, and so you can hopefully identify which one you have straight away just by looking at the ECU. All right, so starting from the very beginning, we've got this one over here. Now this one is an 89 to 91 in terms of an LS400. You can tell 3 plugs and that one on the end. So look at the plugs. The part numbers can change, they obviously supersede each other. So just as an example, this one is a 50102-89661. So this is obviously the very early ones. Like I said, 89 to 91, that's what they look like. You can only use them with a harness that matches an 89 to 91. All right, moving on to the next iteration. Now this one is the 92 to 94. All right, so this one still had the square fuel rails, still had the big aluminium MAF on, but it moved over to these different plugs. All right. Now, what's bearing in mind to take into consideration is that these ones have the same plugs as the 95 to 97 ECUs. All right. The difference is on a 95 to 97, or you can split them into 2 groups actually for the UK, 95 to 96, 96 to 97, because the immobilizer was added in late 1996. All right. So you've got to be careful, because if your harness has these plugs in, all right, doesn't necessarily mean that it is either a 92 to 94 or a 95 to 97. But I've got a really quick, easy way to show you what you have in front of you. So this, as you can see, it's 92 to 94. It's got those plugs on. It's always missing the 28-pin plug because that's one left behind in the vehicle that you need to cut out, which we'll go through that in a minute, all right? But quick way to tell is look at your MAF plug. So if you've got this little tiny MAF plug, that means you had the big aluminium MAF housing. That will then indicate to you 92 to 94. If it is a 95 to 96, it has a much bigger black plug and uses a completely different MAF. It uses the big black plastic housing MAF. Okay, so that's one quick way to tell whether or not your ECU matches your harness. All right. And obviously they have their igniters and MAF and so on that come with the harnesses there. All right, so moving on to the later generation. Now these are your 95 to 97, all right? These are both actually 96, 97 because they both have immobilizer on. The reason I've got 2 of them out is I'm going to go through in a minute and explain to you, but easy way to tell is same plugs as the 92, 94, but they are offset to the side. And in regards to part numbers, usually start at 50250, so you've got 89661, in this case 50310, which indicates an immobilizer model if it's from the UK or Europe, all right? But the non-immobilized 95, 96, they were 50250, but you can have 50251, 50252, etc. They had part numbers that superseded other part numbers and carried on. The other reason I brought both of these out is to show you on a USDM model, usually white plugs would indicate immobilizer. In the UK, that is not the case. The only way to tell if this ECU is immobilized or not is purely by the part number. So you'll see the early ones were 50310, could have 50311, etc. I haven't got all the part numbers listed down, but it's that 3 that's important. So if it's 502 non-immobilized, 95, 96, 503 immobilized. So if you want to check what you got because you bought a motor on a crate or on a pallet or whatever and you're not 100% sure exactly what it is, that's an easy way to tell. You can also put these part numbers into Toyo DIY, all of these here, and they'll go from there. All right. One thing to remember with the 1UZ non-VVTi is, for the most part, you can pretty much use any of these 4 harnesses on any engine. All right. What's important is that you have the complete electronics package. What I mean by that is that you've got a harness with a matching ECU, with a matching igniters, with a matching MAF. Now, there are differences between the early ones and the later ones, things like cold start injector, etc., etc. Okay, so that's why I say, for the best part, if you're in a bind and you've got a guy with a 95 or 96 engine and all you've got in front of you is a 92 to 94 ECU harness and MAF, yes, you can use it on that one. All right, so that's hopefully a little bit helpful information for you guys to go from there. But moving on to the actual harness now. So on the 1UZ non-VVTi, all right, your harness is actually split into effectively 4 sections almost. All right, so you've got the main section, what I call the main section. This is the one that goes in the U shape you see over here and the bit down the middle. Okay, and that is your main engine harness. Okay, then you've got the section that goes down and includes all of your starter plug, your knock harness, and that one goes under the V-bank. So I'm just going to quickly show you on an actual engine that I have here. All right, so obviously this is stripped down, it's only for mocking up harnesses, so a lot of stuff is missing off of this, so don't fret. But basically, yeah, so it goes along here, all right. Now then, there's a section here, there's 2 grey plugs that live here. Now that is another section of harness that comes down here, along here, and it goes off to cam sensor there, cam sensor on this side over here, comes to your coil, which lives here, and it comes down to your crank sensor that lives down in here. All right, so that's your second section, comes off there. We like to have that one because when we build the harnesses brand new, because we don't use the old harnesses, we build them all brand new. Obviously this becomes one harness, so it's no longer split into all these different sections, it becomes one harness. So main harness, the one that goes down the front, all right, and again, this is only the salvage connectors if we can. If not, we've got brand new ones to replace them. Okay, then speaking about the sub harness, now this is the one that goes under the V-bank, so I'm just going to pull this motor out so we can get better access. Apologies for the screeching noise. All right, so this one goes under the V-bank here, okay, and it goes to your starter and it goes to your 2 knock sensors that live in the V-bank there, and that also includes your main power starter cable. All right, so it looks a little something like this. It'll have like a white plastic frame on it that goes around your starter and actually bolts to your starter. You'll have your little starter solenoid and you'll have your knock sensors on that one, and usually a long main, starter power cable you attach directly to your battery. As you can tell by the battery terminal still attached to this one. Now then, this little middle fella over here, this is actually only on the earlier engines. So your later engines, you won't have this middle section. Your earlier ones you will. So this is a 92 to 94 and 95, 96. They stopped doing this middle section and it all went into just a U-shape harness that went around. If you've got that middle section, you'll see it comes in the back here. So this is where all your EGR stuff is. It comes in the middle here. And so basically, there she is. So you pull the top of the intake off and you can see the bolt holes there, and that is where that harness lives. So you do have to take the top of the intake off. If you're 95 to 96, to get into the actual V-bank, to get that harness from underneath out, you don't have to. You've simply got 10 bolts. There's 1 in each corner, which has a nut, and then you've got 1, 2, 3 bolts in the middle. Same on this side, and you can reach that with a bit of, it's a bit difficult, but you can reach that middle one, and the rest of them are not too bad. Just use a thin extension and a small socket on there. And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the whole intake will come off. All right. It is useful to pull that off. A couple of reasons. Number one, check your starter motor. Make sure that works. There's no point in doing all this work and then you get it all back in the car and then boom, your starter motor doesn't work. So you can test that on the bench. Make sure you're happy with that. All right. And then there is one other section of harness, which unfortunately I don't have with me here, but essentially what it does is it goes underneath the vehicle. It goes underneath the engine like this, along the subframe. All right. It's usually got a white piece of plastic that's holding it in. Now that supplies all the connections for your alternator. And on this side, it'll be your oil pressure switch and your aircon pump over there. Now, when you're doing an IS200 Altezza swap, that main harness underneath here has the main power cable for your alternator. All right. Now that cable, funnily enough, or luckily enough, is actually the correct length, and it has the right angled tip that goes directly into your fuse box for your IS200, IS300 or Altezza. So with that particular harness underneath there, we don't necessarily need the whole harness. By all means, you can just remove the alternator and the oil pressure and the aircon plug off of those, and that's all that we need. And you can just cut them off and send them off with sort of 2 or 3 inches of wire, just enough so we can deepin them. Obviously it's got new terminals, new wire, everything is going in. So yeah, you can send that harness, we'll strip it down, clean it up, we'll send the main starter cable back, but from an installation point of view, it makes more sense for you to keep it, because you can actually fit it along the subframe, get it all nicely tucked up and out of the way, ready for when you actually fit the engine in, because it's easier to do it when the engine's out, funnily enough. All right, so I think that pretty much covers that side of things. So in terms of the 1UZ, so we'll just recap. You've got your main engine harness that goes on the top of the engine. Again, might have the middle section, might not, depending on what year you've got. Then you've got the section that goes under the V-bank. That's your starter, your knock and everything, because we pull all those apart and we rebuild those brand new, obviously. Then you've got the section that goes underneath the vehicle, and that's got your alternator and your alternator and your oil pressure switch and everything, again, because we incorporate that into one harness. So you get one harness back instead of having these sort of 3 or 4 different sections. And then finally, this one that goes down the front, which goes to your cam, coil, crank. All right, so those are the harness sections that you need to send us, because obviously we try and salvage as many plugs as we can off of that. And basically that's what we use to build. All right, now in terms of the IS200, here's an IS200 harness. Now IS300, a little bit similar. Altezza, probably a bit similar as well. But basically, obviously, the reason we take this is so we can salvage all the plugs off of here. And this is what helps us to make it plug and play. Specifically, if you're doing an IS200 with a J160 gearbox, we're going to salvage, obviously, the speed sensor and the reverse and all the body plugs and everything to make it plug and play. If you can't provide the IS200 harness for whatever reason, whether it be because you want to keep the car running, etc., not a problem. We can obviously get all these plugs new from Toyota. All right. The only other important one is obviously this grommet. This is what allows you to get in there, and these we can't get from Toyota. So we do have a stash, but we will eventually run out. So at some stage, we will obviously insist that we have to have the harness because of this grommet that we need to put all together. All right. And then just to give you a sneak peek, basically this is obviously an 1UZ VVTi, sorry, 1UZ non-VVTi being built into an IS200 plug and play. So you can see we've putting all the plugs in there, all brand new wire. Obviously we're deep-printing all of these to come with your harness and going from there. And there's a little grommet that we'll obviously throw over when it's finished being done. All right, so that one's just nearly done. Instead of the heat shrink put on it. Now in regards to, I'm going to come back now, and I nearly forgot about it, but all of these ECUs have one plug in them that stays behind in the vehicle. So on these, so 92 to 94, 95 to 96, 96 to 97, it's the 28 pin plug. So this one over here, or that one over there, or that one over there. Now they're in the vehicle, so if you're lucky enough to have the vehicle, again, cut it off 3 or 4 inches, just enough so we can grab hold of the wire to deepen it, to get rid of it, all right? This one, it's the 26 pin plug, okay? Now these ones are readily available. Again, we can get them, no problem at all. The only downside with these 28 pin plugs, and I've ordered a whole load because according to TE, these are now end of life. So that means that these ECU plugs, and as well as the 28 pin plugs, are eventually going to run out. So for the time being, we've got loads. So not to worry, I think we've got about 200 or something in stock. But that might be the last we ever get because they're going out of production. So they won't be around anymore. So again, keep your eye on that. If you are buying engines, try and see if you can get that plug. If not, we can get them. But like I said, that supply will eventually run out. Okay, so hopefully that's been helpful to you guys. If you do have any questions, please feel free to ask away. And hopefully we can answer anything, but hopefully this makes life a lot simpler because you can actually visually see what you are required to do on your side. Thank you very much. Bye.